I had quite a troubling week this week. Every time I tried to prepare my message for today, I was getting a call with bad news all wrong. Just to fill you all in, my sister-in-law in West Australia that I testified about, because after her cancer surgery, they did a biopsy and the results that came back was perfect, that the cancer was rid of. That same afternoon, after I've testified, gone home, get a call saying she had an infection in the gallbladder and back in a hospital. The next thing, the kidneys are failed, and she's now in palliative care. No hope. Then one of my very good friends who used to preach at our Friday prayer group, Aubrey, he had a fall at home. Of course, he's suffering with a bit of dementia as well, and he's been doing some strange things lately. We haven't been able to track, because he lives all alone, and he's got this big 4-bedroom house and all alone by himself. But anyway, to cut a long story short, he went home and he fell down, fell against the dressing table, broke his collarbone and neck, and snapped the spinal cord. He's in palliative care. No hope. Was paralyzed from the time he fell. And the Lord, sometimes when He gives you things to talk about, I always rejoice when I can give good news. That's what the preaching is all about, giving good news. And when you get stuff like this, and it's been happening, then my brother-in-law in Queensland, he's also suffering with dementia, and he went for also cancer as well. And he went for a radiation treatment, and the ambulance was supposed to come and pick him up and take him home. And apparently the ambulance never showed up for 2 hours. So I don't know whether it was his dementia or what, but he just got up, took himself out of the hospital and started walking down the road. And somewhere on the wayside, he didn't know where he was or anything like that. He got dizzy and he was leaning against the wall. And some good lady passing by said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "No, I'm dizzy." And so she called an ambulance. And the ambulance, this is strange, the ambulance got there, and in the meanwhile, the hospital had lost track of him, so they phoned home, and his 2 daughters were out in their cars looking for him, and they managed to actually find him at this place when he was being loaded into the ambulance. And they said the ambulance rang the hospital and said, look, we've got one of your patients here. What do you want us to do? And they said, no, he's fine to go home. And he wasn't. So anyway, his daughters managed to catch that while he was being loaded in, and came and told the ambulance that he's got dementia and he is ill, and that's so they took him back, and he was only released yesterday. But so everything happened, and for some reason, this whole message that I was wanting to prepare for today was all disrupted or interrupted. So please forgive me if I make a few mistakes here and there, but I'm not fully organized as I usually am. But I've put together something which, and then with all this in the background, and I was praying and I said, Lord, what am I going to speak about? And then the news come on. And for some reason, the volume on the news was that much louder, and it was all about Gaza. And how Trump is trying to make this deal. I don't know whether it's worked or not, or I don't know if any of you all have heard the latest on it, but I know he was trying to do a peace deal, and the hostages were going to be released, the Israeli hostages were going to be released, and there was going to be a ceasefire. I hope that worked, because that was the peace that we're looking for, the peace of Jerusalem. And that we're asked to pray for, the peace of Jerusalem in the Bible. And I thought, that's the Lord telling me, talk about the promised land. All right? And like I was saying before, like sometimes when you think about how God answers, all right, I was reflecting on Moses. When I was putting this together for the promised land, I was thinking about Moses. If you look at Moses' life, he lived as a youngster, as a teenager, as a young man. He had a very charmed life, He was the son of the Pharaoh, next in line to be Pharaoh, firstborn son, after he was picked up from the river. And then when you look further back, after that, he gave up all that, didn't he, for God? He could have been Pharaoh, supreme leader, Nobody would be able to touch him with anything. But he chose the reverse, to serve God, And I was reflecting on that, and I was thinking, if you look at, God took him and made him a leader again to lead the people out of Egypt. Right? and gave him all those miracles, the plagues and all that, that was all beautiful, Then it comes to the stage where it's going to the promised land. And what happened to the poor guy? Let's look at something there. And so what happened with that? Moses was forbidden to enter the promised land. Think of all that he gave up and everything. And this was the only thing he worked for the Lord. And then the Lord says, no, let's just read from Deuteronomy chapter 3, and I'm reading from verse 23. Then I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do anything like your works and your mighty deeds? I pray, this is literally pleading, let me cross over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, those pleasant mountains and Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me on your account. This is what the people did, not him. And the Lord was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. So the Lord said to me, enough of that. Speak no more to me about this matter. Poor guy, I reckon he must have really been down. And then the Lord did something. He said, go up to the top of Mount Pisgah and lift your eyes towards the west, the north, the south, and the east. Behold it with your eyes, for you shall not cross over this Jordan. But command Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which you will see. Can you please put that map up? I asked you, Monsi, if you don't mind. Like I was saying, that news came on, and it was all about Gaza. Right? Look at the promised land there. Have a look at that, this thing. What do you find right on the bottom there? Gaza? And it's one of the cities in the promised land. And it's the heart of the city. And do you know that's also all part of Canaan. The promised land, Canaan. That's the whole city of Canaan. And this whole area was the land of the giants too. You know? It's Gaza itself was old Philistia, or where the Philistines were. It's the same place where David fought Goliath. You know? And Goliath was, we know how big he was. And apparently this whole area was all a land of giants. All around that area. I don't see much of that in the current day people that live there, but they were a very, very large, big-made people, you know, that lived in this land. So now it's come to Moses is about to die, or no, first the Lord took them and they conquered Jericho, the city of Jericho, with Joshua leading them, because Moses had anointed Joshua to be the leader there, and so he was there with them. And then they conquered Og of Bashan, and then the king of Sihon. And then they went and took Jericho. And Pastor was talking about the Feast of Trumpets, and we know how Jericho fell. All they did was walk around the city 7 times and blew the trumpets, and the walls fell down. The walls of Jericho fell down. So that was one of the first victories of Joshua. And then he goes on to, but before I do that, I want to first of all show you what the Lord told Joshua, or how to go about his lost it. And the Lord said to Joshua, you know, he said, be not afraid, do not be discouraged. I'm going to be with you all the way, even like I was with Moses. And that's the most encouraging thing I've ever seen in the Bible. That whole passage there. I've lost the thing where I wrote it down. Joshua 1 verse 7, isn't it? Huh? 5, is it? Yeah. Yeah. And he said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you. As I said to Moses, from the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. Now the river Euphrates he's talking about is in current day Turkey. So if you look at that map again, what we saw, this is, Lebanon is right up the top there, right up the top of this thing there. And the cities of Tyre and Sidon, also on top there. And they were known as Byblos. That's where the word Bible comes from. I don't know if it was Tyre or Sidon. One of them was called Byblos. And Bible comes from that. But you look at that area, that's massive, isn't it? You think about that. That's from Turkey all the way down, right up down the Euphrates River. That goes through Iraq, Iran, all those current day cities which are, there in that area. And he said, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. This was the condition. There's always the Lord always has a condition when He gives you a promise, right? And only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. Right? And this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it, for then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. So, with that condition, yes, you're going to have prosperity and success. And so he's taken this challenge up, Joshua. And Joshua was Moses' or the Lord marked him out as a successor to Moses. Right? And there's a lot of similarity in when Joshua led them, same as when Moses led them out of Egypt. There's a similarity even when they were crossing the Jordan River, right? The same miracle that happened with Moses. What happened with Moses? The children of Israel, all the way that the Lord took them out of Egypt, and they've reached the shores of the Red Sea in Egypt. And they're all whinging and complaining. And they said, Lord, why did you bring us out of Egypt? We had food and everything there. And you bring us to this place, and you've got Pharaoh behind us there waiting to kill us. And the Lord was so angry, but I don't know how the Israelites got away with what they did, but for some reason the Lord forgave them. And so the next thing that happens is Moses was told to hold out his staff, and the Red Sea parted. And they all walked through. Right? So And then the Egyptians were all killed. We know the story of the Red Sea parting. Similar to that, when Joshua was taking the Israelites over the Jordan River, right? And the Lord showed him the way. And he said, I'm with you. Don't worry, I'm going to take you over this. Right? And the part of the Jordan where they were going to cross, I was very fortunate when we did our tour of Israel. We went to the actual spot. That spot is the same spot where John the Baptist did his ministry and where Jesus was baptized. And that's the spot that Joshua's led the Israelites over the Jordan River. And they say the time that he did that was the month of Nisan or something like that. And usually the river is flooded at that time. But the Lord told Joshua how to cross that river. They had the Ark of the Covenant with them. And he said, till the priest's feet touch the water of the shores of that Jordan River, do not go near it. All the rest of them had to keep this distance. Right? And soon as the priests got there with the ark, that's the priest carrying the Ark of the Covenant, when they got there, this is what happened. I got that here. I wanted to read that. It's fabulous. You know, when you read that, what happened? Sorry, forgive me. I've got it there. No, lost it. Anyway, what actually happened was, I'm sorry, I mixed that page up, but what actually happened was, this river that's now flood time for the river, at the point where the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant touched the water, the river stopped flowing. It was like dammed. And became similar to what happened to Moses with the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. The river dried up in that portion, and all the ones who were going to go into the promised land crossed over and went in there. Joshua 4:80. Can you put that up, please? But this thing was telling me that, here it is, I got it. It was spring, the first month of the Hebrew calendar, Nisan, which is March, April, and approaching the time of the barley harvest. The river was swollen with Mount Hermon's melted snows. Not the best time for a crossing. Yet, as the priest stepped into the flood water, a blockage at Adam, about 29 kilometers upstream, dammed the river, leaving the riverbed dry. How's that? That's our Lord, isn't it? You know, He can part the sea, He can part the river easier. But it says in 1927, earth tremors caused a collapse of the high city river banks at the same spot, and the Jordan was dammed for over 21 hours in exactly the same spot, 1927, as was with the Red Sea crossing 40 years earlier. Natural forces are employed to clear the way in a miracle of timing. Isn't that marvelous, you know? So, let's go back a bit. Moses is now dead, and Moses is still alive. He's 120 years old. And he's sent 12 spies to go and spy out the promised land. And 2 of the spies were Joshua and Caleb. And to cut a long story short, the spies went there, they came back, they brought all the beautiful fruit and things that were in the whole promised land. And they said, you can't go there. All right? Because we are like grasshoppers in front of those people. He says, they're all giants. They were literally petrified and discouraged the rest of the people from going through, to the extent that the Lord got so angry about it that none of those people that had made it for 40 years in the wilderness and around the desert and everything never made it to the promised land. First, 23,000 of them were lost when they built the altar that of the golden calf and started this thing. So now it's come to almost the remnant of them. And the Lord saying, again, I have promised you to take you over there, and here you are rebelling against me again. So none of you, including Moses, how sad was that, you know? Including Moses, was never going to see the promised land. Never did. He took him up Mount Pisgah and showed him all the area. And he said, all this is going to be given to the children of Israel, but you are not going to cross over. Right? And Joshua and Caleb were the only ones who had the courage to say, no, we will go as the Lord ordered us. Right? And because he did that, God was with him all the way. And the Lord was with Joshua in so many ways as far as fighting, like if you look at all those enemies of it, just those 5 cities alone were all mostly giants. The people were all giants. It's like David facing Goliath. They were petrified for one giant. Right? Imagine 5 city loads of giants. How petrified would they have been? But the Lord just, if you read those battles, of all those battles, that Joshua didn't have to raise a finger, you know that? There was one day, it talks about the Lord sent the hornets. You know what a hornet is? A hornet is a wasp. A very deadly, poisonous wasp. That one sting from that and you die. A whole army of giants was killed by hornets. Joshua didn't need to raise a finger. Everywhere he went, he knew that the Lord was there with him. There was one incident when, I think it was in the city of Ai. They were told, don't go there because I'm not with you. The Lord told them this. See, they had the Lord talking to them, but they rebelled, went in there, and they got defeated. That was not Joshua leading them, though. And the Lord said, no, I told you not to go there, and you went. So quite a few of them were killed. But then they all came back and repented, and they said, Lord, you brought us here. Why do you want to show the enemy, after bringing us all through, why do you want to let them know that you are not a God that's victorious? Because these people in Egypt and everywhere else are going to say, this God brought them all, did all these miracles and all that, and now he's going to kill them off. And he said, how is your name going to be? That was Joshua's prayer. He said, Lord, take us through. And the Lord forgave them again. Like I said, the Israelites used to get away with blue murder virtually. But the Lord took them there. And so then they've come to all these cities and towns, and Joshua's brought them all the way through. And there was another miracle that I was going to lost it. I'm sorry. I had it written down and that's right. In one of the battles, where the 5 kings of the Amorites, this is all these kings were all giants. And the 5 kings of the Amorites. And the Lord told him, don't worry, I'm with you. You're going to win. Right? Go and fight them. Right? And so Joshua's gone with his army, and he's doing a fantastic job of killing these people, with the Lord's help, of course. But then he was fearful that he wouldn't have enough time, because there was such a vast army. You can't believe the numbers that are mentioned there, but it's really, really huge. Even the Israelites that he's talking about, or the Jews, he says the number he gives is as the shores of the sand. That's a lot of people. You don't have that many Jews even now. But in those days, I don't know how so many Jews lived in such a small area. But, and so Joshua was killing these people, and then he was afraid that he's not going to have enough time when the sun is shining. And he gave his message. He said, for the sun to stand still. I think it's chapter 10, verse 12 to 14, I think. Am I right? Yep, it's chapter 10. Then Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the people had revenge upon the enemies. How's that? This is another Elijah. Elijah stopped the rain for 3 years. Here's Joshua stopping the sun. And the sun never went down. They say one theory to it is that there would have been an eclipse of the sun. But all that is speculation, because our word tells us the sun stood still. If God says that, that actually happened. And no need to doubt it. And so God gave him all these beautiful victories over all these giants. It was 31 countries in all that Joshua had conquered. Right? And then he starts dividing the land, the promised land, according to how the Lord had ordered him to do it. Each of the 12 tribes got all the correct portions of land, including Joseph's sons, who were all earlier rebellious against the Jews, but even they got their share. Even though Joseph was not alive and all that, all his sons and all their ancestors all got all beautiful parts of land. They were all given. And after the 12 tribes were given their allotted portions of land, the Levites had to be given a portion of their land, as the Lord instructed them. Because there was no allotted portion for the Levites who were the priests. But the Lord had commanded that they should receive a portion. So all these, from each of these portions, they were given a portion of land. And so everybody was into the promised land in this thing. And the chapter ends with, they had peace and rest. You know, and rest in the Lord. So, praise God, He's such a marvelous God, There was more I was going to, but time. And